welcome to another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast here at Green Spot Restaurant. And we are here, of course, today thanks to our sponsors. So thanks very much to the folks at Empire Gold, National Carpet, and Guaranteed Industries. Joined today by former Liberal Cabinet Minister David Heurtel. I didn't mean for former to sound that predominant, David. I'm sorry.
I'm just a former.
And now a political commentator. So I thought we'd start off by talking, obviously, about what's happening as far as the provincial election is concerned. Mm-hmm. My first question would be, we're only, 2 weeks barely into this campaign, still 2 weeks or 3 weeks left to go. Who has made, in your opinion, the biggest gaffe so far?
Well, first of all, great to be with you this morning. I got to say that the biggest gaffe, in terms of impact, I think, is Quebec Solidaire. This week, Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois had a horrible week because Quebec Solidaire, over the last few years, and especially during this campaign, for the first time, Quebec Solidaire is positioning itself, and Gabriel Nadeau has positioned himself as a potential party and person who could form a government. Before, it was still mostly an activist movement, and it was perceived like that. But with the rollout of this wealth tax and the whole debate around $1 million estates and taxing and the reaction, and doing something that is almost unheard of in politics, bringing all four other opposition leaders together and saying, look, this makes absolutely no sense, getting farmers, UPA, ordinary people saying, hold on a second, and revealing what pretty much everybody's worst fears are about a left-leaning progressive party like Quebec Solidaire. I think in terms of gaffes, this is, I think, the most devastating one for Quebec Solidaire because they will not be able, in my opinion, to recover from it in terms of trying to reach out to people who haven't voted Quebec Solidaire before and might be interested in looking at it. People
so even with the apology, that doesn't change it?
I don't see how Quebec Solidaire, with this and the reaction that's going to go on and on, because this is not going to stop. On the campaign trail, up until the debates, it's going to be about this and what a Quebec Solidaire-led government would be about. And I think Quebec Solidaire is going to have a lot of trouble recovering from this. But I got to say also, Aaron, that François Legault's comments this week from a premier, let's face it, from a premier of Quebec. I mean, this week he's hit immigrants, he's hit Montrealers, and he's hit intellectuals on 3 different instances, on 3 different files. And this is about a person that still, on immigration, what he said, the way he said it, and these dog whistles he's been using. And he used them in 2018 and before 2018. And to come out the way he did, it is ugly, it is wrong. The same thing with, people raising questions about a $7 billion tunnel project in Quebec City and saying, oh, well, it's Montrealers that don't want Quebec City residents to get their own.
And yet, David, he's still a runaway train.
Well, yeah, I get what you're saying, but let's define what a runaway train is.
Well, someone who's going to take maybe up to 100 seats.
Yeah, well, the thing is that in terms of popular support, Bill,
42%.
Well, I mean, maybe he's going to take a hit. Right now, his support is between, 37, 38% and 42% in the polling.
Right.
And that could translate in a massive majority, but that doesn't mean that that's a runaway train in terms of popular support.
Well,
and I think it raises...
That doesn't matter popular, obviously does.
It raises a question about how our democracy works and how our system was built in a way where with 2 parties, it kind of made sense. You would have 2 parties and so the winner would get in the high 40s or the mid 40s, and the second place would get low 30s or high 30s or low 40s. But the thing is, right now, you have 4 opposition parties that are not very good either.
No, but the question is, who's number 2? I'm hearing a lot of inroads being made by Monsieur Duhem, and I don't know. Is he taking anything away? Certainly in Quebec City, some of the outlying regions, he's hitting with Anglos, but not enough here.
He seems to be sliding, though, a little bit, doesn't he?
The last polls and have showed him losing a bit of support. And especially this week. I mean, they all had a bad week, I think. I mean, Éric Duhem, he couldn't really explain, and he's going to have to keep explaining about why 5 of his candidates actually gave money to the occupiers in Ottawa. So this is something that is going to stick to him, along with all the problems he's had with candidates. But the other issue with the Conservative vote is that it's too distributed across the province to actually mean seats. So he could actually get maybe 14-15% of the vote, especially in a low turnout, because his base is activated.
And come out with only a couple of seats.
But he could just come out with a few seats, maybe 1 or 2 seats in the Quebec City region, maybe 1 or 2 seats in the Beauce, and that's it, even if he generates 15% support.
So then the Liberals come back in again. As
well, the Liberals...
2, your former party.
Yeah, the Liberals also... Dominique Anglade has had a better week than last. Her last week was just horrible, let's face it. She was able to, I think, to her reactions to the Legault comments and the Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois comments were strong, but still, her reactions, while good, doesn't mean necessarily that you're flipping voters, that you're activating your base and you're getting them to come out. And that's going to be Dominique's big problem right now, is getting those former Liberal voters and Liberals just to come out and vote Liberal, and that's a big problem for her. But right now, as things stand, if Montreal holds, it could be enough for her to form the opposition, but a depleted official opposition.
Right. One thing about Legault, that comment that he made, of course, a gaffe. But let's not assume that a lot of people aren't secretly thinking what he said. So he's kind of playing the trump card of saying something, backing up on it, but confirming what a lot of people are secretly thinking, unfortunately. So as much as it was a gaffe, he kind of knew what he was saying, and he was talking to his base, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you go outside Quebec, outside of Montreal, rather, and you go into the regions, I mean, immigration is not as big of an issue as it is in the greater Montreal area. So I agree with you that for his core voters, it will not be as much as of a gaffe as voters in Montreal will see it. But where it will affect the CEQ vote, remember, the CEQ is trying to make inroads here in Montreal, in Laval.
Right.
They're putting on a very aggressive campaign in Laval to win more seats. Right. Same thing in the South Shore region near Montreal. They're looking at seats right now that before they didn't think about winning. For example, La Porte, which has been held by the Liberals, by Nicole Ménard, for years, for many elections, which is basically Saint-Lambert and a bit of Greenfield Park. Well, that could be up for grabs. So there's that center, middle-of-the-road voter that could have been interested at looking at the CEQ, and with those comments might be turned off. But I agree with you, it's not going to be enough to turn off the base in the regions and its core support.
Right. Also, about Quebec Solidaire, I want to point out an amazing cartoon that was done in La Presse by Chapelot of him dressed as Robin Hood. And it is amazing, and that will stick. Those political cartoons, that image of him as Robin Hood, everybody's calling him Robin. Forget it. I mean, you're
Robin Nadeau-Dubois.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So what we have not talked about in this mix of political parties, of course, are the two, if you want to call them, fringe parties. Ballarat Holness in Montreal with Bloc Montréal, whatever we want to call them. And, of course, the Canadian Party. We had Colin Standish here last week. He seems very confident, although that list of 125 candidates may end up being closer to 5 or 6 or 10. Do you think they have any or will have any impact on this election? Or is this just a Montreal-centric kind of a vote?
I think it's definitely a Montreal-centric kind of a vote. They may have an impact, a very small impact, in certain very close races. If you take, for example, Verdun. Isabelle Melançon currently represents Verdun for the Liberals. That is going to be a very, very tight race. And the CEQ, but again, with what I just said about the CEQ, it could hurt the CEQ candidate in a riding like Verdun. But the CEQ candidate in Verdun is a former Projet Montréal city councillor for Nuns Island. The Liberals' support in Verdun, there's Verdun proper, and there's Nuns Island. And the Liberal support traditionally has always come massively from Nuns Island. So if you have a divided electorate in Verdun, let's say Liberals stay home. Let's say the PQ vote, which is not very high, but let's say the PQ vote goes CAQ. Let's say you have a few hundred votes that go for Bloc Montréal, a few hundred votes that go for the Canadian Party, and you have a few other hundred votes that go
Suddenly
Conservatives.
that changes the balance.
500. That's I just gave you maybe a 500,000 vote flip there that the Liberals would normally get, and that could be enough in a very tight race to let the CAQ candidate pierce through.
The Corner Booth Podcast is brought to you in part by Empire Gold, where turning your valuables and collectibles into cash is quick and easy, and where they always pay the most for your gold and silver. Empire Gold, Devonshire, west of DeCarry Boulevard, online empiregold.ca. The Corner Booth Podcast is brought to you in part by Guaranteed Industries. Remember, you can beat the heat with a Guaranteed Industries Lennox air conditioning system. They've been in business since 1957. They are a Lennox premier dealer, 514-342-3400 or online, guaranteedindustries.ca. The Corner Booth Podcast is brought to you in part by National Carpet, timeless and classic styles in carpets and area rugs from the finest mills around the world, plus professional installation and design services. National Carpet online at tapinational.com.
You know, David, I think the biggest question is going to be what impact apathy is going to have in this election.
Big impact.
A lot of people don't want to vote because it's a foregone conclusion to them.
I think you're right. I think we're going to see. So in 2018, turnout was at 68%, and it was low for a Quebec election.
Right.
Just to give you an idea, everybody thought the turnout in the federal election was incredibly low in 2021 at 62%. And let's not talk about the municipal election in Montreal, less than 35% turnout in Montreal. So I agree with you, but what's even worse for the Liberals is that Liberals traditionally, when they're not happy with the Liberal Party, they stay home. And so you could have that double whammy of apathy there.
Right, yeah.
And look at the Ontario election, which is basically the same type of game plan that I think François Legault's playing. The Doug Ford campaign, which was very boring, very middle of the road, talk to your base, get your announcements out, avoid gaffes.
Right.
But the turnout in Ontario was 43%. And yet it yielded a massive majority of seats for Doug Ford.
Right. Is there no big issue here? Sorry, is there no,
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so
not yet. There could be. Remember, Jack Layton in 2011 didn't start turning things around. Remember the orange wave in Quebec?
Till the end.
Till the last 2 weeks of the campaign where it flipped. I remember the campaign I was part of in 2014, the Philippe Couillard Liberal team didn't start flipping it against the Parti Québécois until after the Pierre-Carl Pellado fist bump and until the last 2 weeks where something happened.
Right. So
right
far,
now,
nothing.
There's nothing because right now...
No fist bumps are coming.
Well, there hasn't been that defining issue or defining event that has mobilized. First of all, you need an opposition party to be able to coalesce. That's what Justin Trudeau did in 2015. He was able to be the answer to the question, which was change. Who can affect change better after 10 years of Harper? And he was able to answer that question and take the NDP vote. Remember, our friend Tom Mulcair was favored to win that at some point. But Justin Trudeau was able to flip that. There was a lot of issues, but he was able to embody the image of change. Right now, we don't have that on the opposition side. We don't have the issue.
Interestingly enough, forget change. Now you have the party in power running on continuons, on let's keep going.
Let's keep going. Everything's going well, but that's the problem. With a divided electorate and a divided opposition, you don't have that capacity of establishing a very solid ballot question, a single issue. And that's the problem right now with the oppositions. And the fact is that nobody is actually reaching out. We've lost this idea of making speeches, trying to reach out to people that are not necessarily your supporters at the beginning. We are not trying to build a coalition, a big tent. All these parties are only speaking to their bases right now. They're not reaching out, and that's a big problem. You can't build a bigger coalition of voters to take power if you don't do that.
But there are a lot of big issues. I mean, even the handling of the pandemic, even who's been grocery shopping lately, inflation, these are big issues, but have we just become lackadaisical?
But isn't that funny? Because you're so right, yet every time you ask a leader, the boilerplate answer is, well, in speaking to the people when I go out and talk to people, it's not the language that comes up, it's not Bill 90, it's the inflation. Yeah. Yet there has been, as you said, nothing really outside of everyone offering tax cuts dealing with this.
Well, that's it, because first of all, it's true that everybody's come out with basically the same proposal, so nobody's standing out. If everybody's basically offering tax cuts, except Quebec Solidaire, well,
handouts. Wait a minute, handouts. There's a difference.
And so the idea here becomes, how do you stand out? Because it's one thing saying, okay, this is what I propose, but no leader, and that's the thing about politics and an election campaign. It's not just about your policies and what you're proposing. Everybody's proposing tax cuts. It's who do you want as the leader, the aspirational leader, the one that is also about belief. It's about also the emotional connection. And right now, we don't have leaders that are doing that right now. And that's a big problem in our provincial politics.
Even with Legault.
But you touch on a very interesting point there, because you're absolutely right. They make no effort whatsoever to go after others in their base.
No.
Look at what Legault did this week with, not apologizing, but taking down any English from the CAQ website.
Right. Except for the donations page.
And making a point of it, by the way.
Making a point of it, proudly taking it down. Yeah. What does that suggest to Anglophone? He doesn't care whatsoever.
He doesn't give.
It is not part of his political strategy to reach out to the Anglophone community.
No, but to go to that extreme and say, proudly he took this down, any semblance of English, which tells you one thing: there's no attempt whatsoever to go after.
But it's more of an attempt of being sure he's not outflanked on the nationalist question by the Parti Québécois, because he's going after the PQ vote.
I think that's done with now, given what Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon did this week. I mean, we can sit and talk. Yes, the Queen has died. Yes, this was an issue, and will be for a couple of weeks. At some point, people wonder, no matter what political stripe you're of, do you get to show a little bit of class or not? Do you come out the same day and say that you disagree with the Premier's, taking down the flag at half-mast, and actually go and do what he did? Who are you playing to?
That tells you what's left of the core support for the Parti Québécois. And Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon there missed a great opportunity to show class, because up to this point, actually, in terms of content, he had been solid. Not enough, again, to grow support for the Parti Québécois, but he was running a very disciplined, well-thought-out campaign in terms of the issues and what was being proposed, and very energetic. But here again, he lost a great opportunity either to stay quiet or, as you say, to just show class. Yeah. I mean, regardless of what you think about the monarchy, the fact is that the Queen was the head of state of not only the United Kingdom, but of Canada.
Yeah, like it or not.
You can disagree, but Quebec is still part of Canada. And politically right now, a majority of Quebecers do not want out of Canada. And the fact is that the Queen is the head of state. Albeit symbolic, even though symbolically. But the fact is, and it's petty, and it's also, it just draws attention on the pettiness instead of talking about real kitchen table issues. Again, people right now, yes, the Queen is dead. Yes, the Queen has been part of our culture, of our society for decades. Right. And you can be for, against, have an opinion, fine.
Not the moment to bring it up.
But the fact is that if you want to bring in support, show class, don't be petty.
Yeah. He lost the older lady vote there too.
I don't think he had that.
Not that she was that concerned about
you never know.
But the thing, I just think it's just you in politics, the key is to add. You don't subtract.
Exactly.
And this was an opportunity, either be quiet, be respectful, but you can have people that just because most people, all they're going to do is they're going to roll their eyes.
You know, a lot of people are projecting PQ will get only one guy in,
Yeah.
Pascal
Berube.
Berube, and he is a classy guy. Actually, he's a very smart guy,
Yeah.
and I can't believe for a minute that he would have gone along with something like that.
I've known Pascal.
He's been in politics for a long time.
I've
He's
known
way too
Pascal
smart.
for years. He was a junior minister in the Pauline Marois government, and
Right.
I worked with him when I was at the Olympic Park. He was tourism minister, and he is very respectful. He's a skillful politician, but the fact is that there's nothing there that will help the Parti Québécois gain votes, and that's what you need to think about in politics. Is that we have gotten so far into the wedge issues and wedge politics and divisiveness because that's easier to activate your base, that you're forgetting that by dividing like this, you're creating all these smaller parties and you're only talking to your base.
Yeah.
And you're not thinking about the fact that to govern effectively, you actually have to bring in people.
Right.
You have to maybe think about, and this is a word that has completely disappeared from the political lexicon because now it's a dirty word, compromise.
What?
Yes, and you have to try to bring in people. And the fact is right now, this is where we're at, Aaron, because this is major because you're seeing the results of this. Some governments get elected on these platforms of divisiveness and anti-government, and government doesn't work. But what happens once you're in government and you actually have to govern, you actually have to bring people together. You have to build consensus. You have to compromise. Best example, Jason Kenney. Won in Alberta on a landslide being anti-government. Government doesn't work for you. Came into power, had to bring people behind him, had to lead, couldn't do it. And he was ushered out. And so that's the problem, because if you come in on a platform of divisiveness and you come in on a platform that you're not trying to bring people together and it's my way or the highway, and you're only talking to your base, it might get you to power. But sustaining power and governing is a completely different thing because you have to compromise.
But in the past, with PQ governments, there are people like Lucien Bouchard and even Parizeau who reached out to the English community, right?
Yeah.
Now we have Legault who's not reaching out to the complete closed doors snub. I mean, so no wonder Anglophones will stay home or will vote for these fringe parties. But, on the other hand, to say, or liberals, but we also feel betrayed by the liberals. So it's understandable that people will stay at home.
It is
That door
understandable.
has been shut.
I get it,
So
but
then,
it's
my
very
question
worrying.
is, if
Very
that's
worrying.
the case,
Absolutely.
what will it take? We still have 3 weeks left to go in this campaign to get to those people, give them a reason to say, oh, now I will go out and vote because this is what I heard. So my question would lead to be, how important are the debates going to be?
They're going to be very important if there is a moment. There's going to be an opportunity. The debates are going to be fundamental because there has to be from one of the leaders a key defining moment. I'll take, for example, actually François Legault in 2018. In 2014, during the 2014 campaign. The CQ was slipping very badly in the polls. And there was a final debate, and François Legault just let go of the script of the messaging that he had, that people had seen and heard during the campaign, and just said, he got mad. He said, enough. And he kind of showed who he was and what he was about for the first time, really, since he had come back into politics. And that actually salvaged, and you saw the spike after the debate. And the CAQ salvaged a very respectable third place in the seats and in the popular vote behind the PQ and the Liberals. And it showed that the CQ had a new momentum. That's what is going to be needed. Either Dominique Anglade or Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois.
Or Duhem.
Or Duhem.
I
see Duhem
I
as
see
being
Duhem with the
making the
break-in.
defining get mad moment.
There's going to have to
I
be
don't
see
that type
Dominique
of event.
Anglade getting
And he's a
mad.
good debater.
Well, it can be mad, it can be emotion. It can be. There's different ways of showing emotion. I'll tell you, for example, a lot of people will remember this maybe, but this goes back to 2008. But when Hillary Clinton showed emotion after the New Hampshire primary against Obama, it actually salvaged her campaign and allowed her to get to the end. She didn't win, but it showed a different side of her that re-energized the campaign. So all I'm saying is that there are these events in debates. Brian Mulroney against John Turner, for example, that define.
That Justin Trudeau moment with Tom Mulcair. How many? What's your number?
Exactly.
What's your number?
That actually, because right now for the opposition leaders, it's going to be about who converges. Like you're saying, the Justin Trudeau moment with Tom Mulcair convinced a lot of voters across Canada to say, okay, the Liberals are the vehicle for change, not the NDP. And so that's what happened, and it converged, it coalesced. Is it enough to get the CQ out of power? Probably not. But now the battle is about who's going to be the official opposition.
But if Legault is dismissive towards Dominique Anglade,
as he's been in the past,
as he has been in the past,
that's the trap.
That could be a very defining.
That is a trap, and it's going to be up to his staff.
He's now opened the doors, right?
By the way, he's dismissive against all of them. It's not just her.
No, but yes.
But he has a history of being more dismissive, but towards women. François Legault has had a problem, especially with women.
Yes, of course.
He's opened the door now, it would seem to me, for Dominique Anglade in that debate based on this, immigrants, extremist violence. She's already obviously got that as something she'll go after him for. If she keeps pushing on that, I imagine that would be a plus for her, wouldn't it?
If she gets mad enough, he will be dismissive.
Well, that's what, debate preparation is for. And so I'm sure Legault's staff is going to be preparing him for that, for these types of attacks. He is vulnerable to maybe getting off script. But at the same time, Dominique Anglade has a challenge here of going from, yes, being a very harsh critic of François Legault's comments on immigration, to connecting that to the issue on the ground for voters, because the issue is not about as long as you're talking about immigration, you have different positions, and let's face it, even people that are for immigration, a lot of them say, well, hold on, not all out immigration. It's about the jobs. It's about, there's a lot of different facets to the immigration debate, even if you're for immigration, or even people that say I'm against immigration, not against all immigration. So it's a very complex debate. The idea here is, and that's where, for example, when I was immigration minister, when I took the file, it was one of our worst issues politically. When we polled, we were down on immigration, we were attacked by the CQ, we were attacked by the Parti Québécois on that issue. But when we started flipping the argument from talking just about immigration into immigration as a solution to the labor crisis, and it's going to help you in all the regions, you who currently you have a small business, a medium-sized business, you cannot find people. You cannot grow your business because you don't have people. You're refusing business. You're refusing contracts. You're thinking maybe that you're going to have to close down or move or downsize because you don't have enough labor. Then you talk about immigration as a solution, and you're connecting with the issue. The issue outside Montreal is not immigration. The issue is lack of labor. And if you talk too theoretically about that, you're not connecting with the electorate. And that's been Dominique Anglade's problem on this. She's on the right side of the issue, but she seems to have a lot of trouble turning that issue into a winner, because you have to make it palatable. Because most Quebecers in the regions, francophones, anglophones, I don't care, I know this, I've been around as immigration, a majority of Quebecers are for immigrants. They're not xenophobic, they're not anti-immigration, they're not racist. But if you keep talking about immigration, then you're exposing yourselves to all these variations and complexities of the debate, which are warranted. It's not an easy debate, it's complex. But at the same time, you have to turn it into a way to talk about it that shows concretely what it's going to do positively for people on the ground.
I would ask you, that focus aside, why do you think Dominique Anglade has simply not been able to connect with people?
I think there's a lot there to do with the way she talks about policy. It's very technocratic. It's very bureaucratic. And also, I think, and that's not entirely her fault, but part of it strategically, I think it's been an oversight with the fact that she wasn't able to have the advantage of having a leadership convention. And then after that, there was the pandemic. So people didn't get the chance to know her. Quebecers, and it's not just Quebecers, Canadians, Americans, there has to be also an emotional connection.
Right.
It's not just about policy, and that's why right now, actually, the Liberals and the opposition parties are actually making a huge mistake playing the CQ's game and the old way of doing campaigns, which is every day, okay, today we're talking about the economy. This is what we would do on the economy if we were the government. Next day, today we're going to talk about agriculture. This is what we would do. Today we're going to, and every day there's an announcement of the day, and we're going to be talking about that today. First of all, people don't keep up with this. People, the way they consume media, the way it's completely transformed. That's not how they do it. But also, you have to connect emotionally. That's, for example, can you tell me one thing really that Joe Biden promised? Can you point to one issue, one campaign promise against Trump?
That's so funny you say that. You know what I think of Joe Biden during that campaign? That debate moment where he looked at Donald Trump and said, Shut up, man.
There you go.
Right.
That resonated.
And the guy from Pennsylvania, when he said, I'm from Scranton, I know. And the thing is that the flip voters, the people that are willing to be swing voters, that could move in Quebec, that voted, let's remember, in 2014, Quebec gave 42% of support to the Liberals. So think about this.
Yes.
Now you're barely at 17%.
But it was a lot easier in those days, David, because
those days are 8 years ago, Bill. This is not. We're not talking about the 50s. We're talking about 8 years ago, Bill. Those days. What are you talking about? I was there.
Back in the day.
Back in the day.
They had separation as an issue and kept hammering away.
Not last election.
But the thing is, not in 2018.
Not in 2014.
No, but again, that was.
And with Pelodeau, too.
I'm not. But it was. But see, you're making my point.
Yes.
That was an emotional appeal.
Yeah.
That's exactly what
it
I'm
was
saying.
not about a promise.
No, but that's exactly the point.
So what my
were
point
able to
is,
hammer
Bill,
away at
you
that issue.
have to connect emotionally with people.
Yeah, well, obviously
And right
she
now,
I love that we're
parties are not
attacking you
doing
now like you're a liberal minister
I know,
about at
I
this
know.
point in the
I don't know
this
what
is
Bill
great.
has. I don't know. Maybe I don't know.
No, but
Maybe
the thing is that they have.
bring him some Jello or something.
But she doesn't have. Look, we're all pussyfooting around, but honestly, she doesn't have a lot of charisma. Okay, and if you look at somebody like Trump, okay, or you look at somebody even like Trudeau, these people, they're drawing people in not by what they're saying, but who they
You're
are.
talking about leadership.
And unfortunately, she doesn't, unless she's going to let loose somewhere along the
royal
road.
jelly.
She just seems that we're avoiding. We don't want to say it.
You call it gravitas. You call it leadership.
But it's true. She doesn't have a
So the
lot of
tip
charisma.
for her is, first, can you develop that kind of thing?
Well,
I don't think so, can you?
I mean, you can't fake it because you lose points if you're not yourself. But I think she's going to have to find a way over the next 3 weeks to connect more, but connect beyond that what's left of the Liberal base and talk to those suburban voters across Quebec.
If I could move beyond the province for a moment, David, in a few days to come, there will be a coronation for the new Conservative leader.
Tomorrow, actually.
Yes, and as a consequence, I hear that Mr. Trudeau suddenly has decided that he's going to run again in federal politics, and Christian Freeland is seeking jobs elsewhere. All by way of suggesting to me that he is just absolutely relishing the possibility of going up against Mr. Poilievre. I think if it was Charest, he would be so tickled.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think, let's be clear, Justin Trudeau, Bill, did say he was planning on running again several months ago. I mean, he said it during, in the spring.
But we didn't believe him then.
No, but that's it. And the thing is what else is he going to say? I mean, first of all, the minute you say you're not running again, that means leadership convention.
But my
that
point
means,
is like licking his chops at the prospect.
Yeah, well,
of taking,
I'm getting to my point though.
Yeah.
I got your point.
Thank
now,
you.
my point is the fact is that he's saying of course he's going to say that because again you're about to start a parliamentary session. You're on the 19th. You have your troops, you have your cabinet. You don't want to have doubt
Sure, it's
around your
demoralizing.
leadership.
Yeah.
It's demoralizing. Now people are going to start running, and it's going to take attention away from your agenda if you still want to do things. So you don't want to be a lame duck prime minister. So first of all, no matter what the circumstances are, no matter what he actually wants to do, of course he's going to say that. Two, the fact is that this story about Chrystia Freeland at NATO, hold on a second. Well, NATO just named a Canadian as undersecretary to NATO. So the fact is, no non-European has ever been under Secretary General of NATO.
Right.
And especially right now, with the situation in Ukraine and Russia, to think that Europeans would agree to a non-European.
She speaks Ukrainian.
lead it.
She speaks Ukrainian.
Yes, but
Yes.
the fact is that Ukraine is not a member of NATO.
I agree.
Very true,
The
very
point
true.
being,
Very
she's
true.
looking
U-
at.
Ukraine doesn't
Small
have
David,
point.
But
the
you
point
have to-
being, she's looking
So-
elsewhere.
have to
She's
speak-
No,
saying like.
again, I disagree. I got your point. I'm disagreeing with your point.
But she's
you can repeat it many times, Bill. I will not agree with your point. The fact
This
is,
may be
trying
a
to-
better
keep
debate than what we're going to see in a week or so from now.
because
This
the
is
fact
good.
is, what it does do for Chrystia Freeland is that it raises her profile. This is good. To be considered is a
But she
great
wanted
thing.
to be the leader, no?
How do you know this?
Yeah, Bill.
I just got
You
the
assume?
feeling. I got the impression.
Is that how you
Right.
write your columns?
Yes.
Just impression?
That's how we all do our work.
Look at the time, everybody.
I'm
David.
just saying that Chrystia Freeland, if she, there could be a Chrétien Martin dynamic beginning, which could be very interesting. But the fact is, this is amazing for Chrystia Freeland to be thought of, even if she doesn't get it, even
She's not going to get it, you say.
but even to be considered. That's my point,
Yeah.
Bill. To be considered, to have your name. Sometimes you just to have your name. Look,
Yeah.
they considered me to run for mayor. Some very influential columnist at the Gazette wrote big stories about me running for mayor back in
who?
2021.
Why did you let them down?
And the fact is,
And
it
you
does
could have,
raise.
and you could have been a
Yeah,
contender.
you could have been a contender.
But it raises my point is that this is
Yeah.
very good for Chrystia Freeland either way,
Right.
and it could help her eventually if she
she's
does
smart,
decide
and
to
she's
run
good, and she's-
for the leadership of the Liberal Party if it becomes available.
David, we're out of time.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for joining us
Great-
today. It's been a
great to be
pleasure.
with you.
And we hopefully will see you very, very soon. I will ask you just before we leave your call on the provincial election.
I think it's going to be actually right now the way things stand. I think CQ, obviously, CQ majority, but weaker than expected. I think we're going to be more in the 75, 85 seat range.
Who's the official opposition?
The Liberals.
Okay. David
But a
Heurtel.
weakened Liberal opposition.
Thank
Until you
so
take
much.
over as party leader.
Please.
All right, that wraps up, I think, this edition of the Corner Booth. Thanks so much for being with us.